A reading from the 9th chapter of the Holy Gospel according to John. As Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. He spat on the ground and made clay with saliva and smeared the clay on his eyes and said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed and came back able to see. His neighbors and those who had seen him earlier as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is," but others, "No, he just looks like him." He said, "I am." They brought the one who was once born blind to the Pharisees. Now Jesus had made clay and opened his eyes on a Sabbath. So then the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see. He said to them, "He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and now I see." So some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a sinful man do such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you have to say about him, since he opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet." They answered and said to him, "You were born totally in sin, and are you trying to teach us?" Then they threw him out. When Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, he found him and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered and said, "Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." He said, "I do believe, Lord," and he worshipped him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I hope you have the image of that miracle I asked you to consider that you have experienced in your life, the presence ultimately of Christ's face. Those are important events in our life. They remind us that Jesus Christ, the presence of God, is indeed in our midst. Too often, unfortunately, we don't see that. Too often we just kind of go on about our business. The gospel today is one of three in the time just before we begin Palm Sunday, where Jesus touches us in a very special way. In John's gospel, miracles are not called miracles, they're called great signs. Signs which point to something greater. So we had last Sunday the story of the Samaritan woman. What a sign that was, how her life was turned around to draw others to come to the well to see this Jesus, who knew everything about me, as she said. So water is seen as a great sign of the beginning of faith. And then today we have another great sign. A man born blind, unsolicited, Jesus walked up to him and smeared wet clay from his saliva onto his eyes. Almost humorous, and then Jesus says, "Now go wash your face." And then he could see. We'll concentrate on what that sign pointed to, and next week the sign will be a man brought back to life, Lazarus. But we hasten too fast. Let's go back to the blind man. His life was nothing but darkness from birth. Once again, I can't imagine. We can close our eyes and we can put our hands over our eyes to create as much darkness as possible, but it's still not like this blind man who never experienced light in any form. And then along comes Jesus, who changed his whole life. He is able to see, and then we hear the rest of the story. 4 trials take place for him, just like we have trials in our own life. Based on faith, he was asked by his family and people who knew him, "How were you able to see? Or are you indeed the same person?" He said, "I am that person. I was blind, and that man enabled me to see." And then he was approached by the Pharisees. And the Pharisees asked him, how was he able to see, especially since the man did something terrible on the Sabbath. He performed a work. And the blind man, now being able to see, made another step. He said, "I was blind, and the prophet enabled me to see." His faith is unfolding. The Pharisees went to his parents. They were trying to get to the bottom of this, and the parents were a little frightened, and all they said was, "We don't know of what you speak. He's an adult. He can speak for himself." It's an important statement for we of faith. We can speak for ourselves. And then finally Jesus comes forward and says, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" "Who is he?" the blind man said. "I am the Son of Man," Jesus said. And his faith made a leap. He knelt down and worshiped him. "I was blind, and God, the divine, enabled me to see." What a great story of how Jesus, who initiates a sign, a miracle in our life, continues to be present to us as long as our faith continues to make that advance. The man, the prophet, and now the Son of God was able to make me see. We learn from this that we are to accept healing from Jesus, the sign, the miracle, for instance, that we first imagined. When we're baptized, we receive the water that initiates us into that relationship with Jesus Christ. And then, throughout our life of faith, darkness is gradually removed so that we see the light. Even at the very end of our days, we're told, as we take our last breath, "Go to the light. Go to the light. The angel and Jesus Christ will lead you." And then at the very end, we recognize that Jesus ultimately gives us life. We need to hear that over and over again, because we're in a world of relativism and secular humanism and atheism. We're bombarded with it every day. And it's easy to succumb and to forget the 3 great signs that John shares with us during these 3 weeks before Holy Week: water, light, and life. Today we're going to be giving the second scrutiny to our RCIA community. We're not testing them. We're simply asking them to receive from Jesus Christ as this unfolds before them, as they ultimately say yes at Easter to being baptized, confirmed in the Spirit, and receive the Eucharist, that they will be able to be sent, just like this blind man, out into a world to share that baptism of water, to share that special gift of light that dispels the darkness, and that ultimately brings life to a lot of things that seem pretty dead and hopeless in our world. The RCIA journey is our journey. And that's why when we hear the hymn so often, Amazing Grace, we continue to find that resonating in our heart. I once was lost and now I am found, was blind, but now I see.